With these techniques, I prefer to go through them with a class because I believe that people get more out of it when they're actively engaged. Obviously, I can't do that with a pre-recorded video, but what I can do is the next best thing, which is to show you a recording of when I did do this with a live class a few years ago during the pandemic. So that's what I'm going to do now.
Reading critically, it proceeds in 3 steps, which we call pre-reading, first reading, and close reading. Pre-reading is basically considering the context. It involves things like reading the title and saying, what does the title tell me? Asking yourself a question like where it was published, things like that. So you're not actually reading the text in the first step. And the second step is the first reading, where you just read it once quickly from beginning to end. You don't make notes, and if there's parts that you're confused about, you don't worry about them. The purpose of the first reading is actually to prepare you for the close reading, which is the really important part. What is the purpose of the first reading? Well, it sometimes happens that you don't really understand what a text is about until you get to the end. Sometimes you don't understand what the first sentence in a text is saying until you get to the end. So this is another sort of context thing. It gives you a global understanding of what it's about, and you're going to get much more out of it if you give it a quick reading first. So the third step is the close reading. This is where you are trying to understand the text, and it's going to consist largely of flagging and note-taking, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. So we are going to practice these techniques on a text which I have prepared. It is the sample text for critical reading, or whatever the thing is called, that I put on eClass. And what we're going to do today with the sample text for critical reading, that's what I'm going to be expecting you to do with the critical reading assignment. And they're also even similar kinds of texts. Any questions on what I've said so far? No need to raise your hand or anything. You can just speak up. Step one of critical reading techniques is consider the context. So what we're interested in here is mainly the title. We're going to consider the title. We're going to consider the author. We're going to consider where it was published and when it was published. So you can think of that. You can remember that if you think what, who, where, when. What, who, where, when. What is it called? Who is the author? Where was it published? When was it published? And so we're going to consider each one of these things to see if they give us any clues that are going to help us to understand the text. Title: Response to licensed users of guns, just like users of cars, asterisk. Well, I wonder what that asterisk says. Do you wonder what that asterisk says? I wonder what that asterisk says. Here it is at the bottom of the screen. It says, the January 1st, 1994 issue of USA Today contained an editorial titled, Licensed Users of Guns, Just Like Drivers of Cars. It defended the position that, quote, as a matter of public safety and accountability, the states should require that all guns be licensed, unquote. The Andrew Maru selection above presents an opposing argument. Okay, well that's helpful because it tells us where it was published in USA Today. It tells us when it was published, like probably a week or two after January 1st, 1994. And it also gives us a clue as to what the author is probably going to be arguing for in this text. Would anybody like to tell me what you think the author is going to be arguing for in this text? Just speak.
I think, can everyone hear me?
I can.
Okay. I think he's trying to say that guns should be as easily accessible as getting a car's license.
Okay. Does that sound right? Or does anybody disagree?
I see it as like just like getting your license. It's easy to get, easily attainable, and like can cause problems.
Okay. Let's go back to the footnote. Okay. USA Today editorial titled Licensed Users of Guns Just Like Drivers of Cars. The Andre Maru selection above, what we're reading, presents an opposing argument. So now what do you think the text is trying to say?
I think he's going to argue that you shouldn't have to have a license to carry a gun.
Yes, I think that's the correct thing to infer here. It says it's going to be arguing against the position, and the position that the author is going to be arguing against is licensed users of guns, just like drivers of cars. And this is also, you're told this in the title, it says response to, and then something in quotation marks. So if somebody is responding to it, they're probably going to be disagreeing. Normally they're going to be disagreeing. So if you see something as like a response to something, then they're probably going to be arguing for, if not the opposite position, then at least a contrasting position. Okay, so we've learned a lot just by looking at the title and the footnote. Who wrote it? Come on, this is an easy one.
A wild guess and say Andre Maru.
Yes, I'm pretty sure you rolled a 20 on your perception check there, because you're absolutely right. Andre Maru, and who is Andre Maru, and why should we care? Well, the text, the thing, helpfully tells us that he was a 1992 Libertarian Party presidential nominee. So he was nominated to run for president by the Libertarian Party. So we're going to assume American president. We're going to assume American Libertarian Party. Does anybody know who the Libertarian Party are or what they stand for, or do you want to just guess? Yeah, I mean, even if you could probably just guess what they stand for by just knowing what they're called, the Libertarian Party. Anybody?
They're the authoritarian right group, so more right-leaning.
Yeah, more right-leaning. And how do they feel about guns?
They love them.
They love guns, yes.
You don't believe in government control over you?
Yes, yes. Except apparently over women's bodies. That's okay. So if you'd never heard of Libertarian Party, maybe you have no familiarity with American politics, you could always Google. If you're given an author's name and there's no background about the author given, well, you can always Google the author. Because nowadays, everybody has access to all of the information in the world at any time. Oh, look, he has a Wikipedia entry. And as you know, you can always believe what you read on Wikipedia. American politician, first libertarian, elected to a state legislature, later served Alaska House of Representatives. Okay, that's not very interesting. It just doesn't tell us anything more than the just the little note here in the thing. So what did we do? Who, what, where, who, where was it published? It was published in USA Today. Okay, why does it matter where it was published? Well, that can matter a lot, because when you know something about the author, you sort of know the perspective that the author is going to be arguing from. Where it was published can give you similar information. Publications have readerships. So now you're going to have an idea of who it's addressed to. So you sort of like knowing who the author is, knowing something about the author tells you the perspective that the author is speaking out of. And if you know something about where it was published, then you know you can get a rough idea of the people that the author is speaking to. So USA Today. Well, I know what USA Today is, but I'm going to Anyway, USA Today is an internationally distributed American daily middle market newspaper that is the flagship publication of its owner, Gannett. What does a middle market newspaper mean? I do not know what that means. Middle market newspaper is a newspaper that caters to readers like entertainment as well as the coverage of important news events. Halfway point of journalistic seriousness. Okay, hey, well, if you didn't learn anything else today, you learned what a middle market newspaper is. General education. Okay, so I'm skimming down. I'm going to draw your attention to this line. USA Today has been known to maintain a generally centrist audience. So a centrist audience means an audience that does not think of themselves as either particularly conservative or particularly liberal. They don't think of themselves as being right-wing or left-wing. That is what centrist means. So that would make you think that Andre Maru is speaking to an unbiased audience. You would think that USA Today is a publication where you could have a reasonable expectation of trusting what they have to say and that they would be unbiased, but that doesn't imply that everybody who writes for them is unbiased. Because you can be a centrist publication, and that could mean you're going to be giving viewpoints from people both on the left and the right. That could be a way of being centrist, you know, fair and balanced. Okay, so we did, what is it called? We did who wrote it, we did where is it published, we did when was it published. Now, when it was published is often not going to tell you anything, but it can. If it was a while ago when things were different, that's going to tell you about both the audience and the perspective that the author is writing out of. So this was written in 1992, which was actually a pretty long time ago. And so that might make you think that the political discourse may have been quite different back then, which is a reasonable inference to make. The truth is, though, when it comes to the topic of gun control in the US, I can tell you that the political background has not changed at all. There has been no movement since well before 1992, and everything that this guy says here could just as easily have been said today. So we're done the first step, the pre-reading, considering the context. With respect to the assignment, when you do the assignment, I want you to write down not just the title and who wrote it and whatever. I want you to write down what those things tell you. So if you were doing this, the assignment for this one, I would like you to write down something like, well, Andre Maru is a Libertarian Party presidential nominee, which means he's a libertarian, which means he comes from this end of the political spectrum, so he's going to have a right-wing bias. And the title, you could say something like, well, the title says responsible licensed users of guns just like users of cars, so he's probably going to be arguing that we shouldn't require licenses for users of guns, and so on. The next step is the quick reading. So all of us together now, we are going to read it quickly from beginning to end without stopping. And we're going to read it to ourselves. I'm not going to read it out loud. Ready, set, go. All right, so that's the first read step done. So now we're going to do the close reading. Now, like I said, close reading consists largely in flagging and note-taking. I want to mention that these numbers at the beginning of the paragraphs here, those are not part of the original text. I just added those because it's part of an assignment, so it would be easy to refer to paragraph 2 or something like that. We're going to read through this sentence by sentence, thinking about what the sentences are saying and highlighting and probably also taking notes on anything that we feel needs to be highlighted or taken notes on, or that seems to be problematic. If anti-gun laws worked, then New York and Washington, the states with the toughest anti-gun laws, would have the lowest crime rates. But they have the highest. Conversely, crime rates plummeted up to 90% after certain cities and states, like Orlando, Florida, and Kennesaw, Georgia, allowed law-abiding citizens to carry concealed handguns. All right, what is flagging? Well, flagging is basically a more active form of underlining and highlighting. In flagging, you don't just underline or highlight, you do underline or highlight, but you also note why you're underlining and highlighting it and put whatever other information there, which will be helpful to you to help both in understanding the text right now and if you need to understand it or remember it later. What are the sort of things that you should highlight? Well, it depends on what you're looking for. Definitions and examples are good things to highlight. If you come across what you think is the author's thesis, which is to say their main point, oh, you should definitely take note of that. But since we're reading critically, we're also interested in any suspect elements. And so I want you to get into the habit of when you read something, just ask yourself, does that make sense? Do I think that's true? Are there any problems with that? Anti-gun laws worked in New York and Washington states, but the toughest anti-gun laws have the lowest crime rates, but they have the highest. Conversely, crime rates plummeted up to 90% in certain cities and states. Blah, 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 allowed law-abiding citizens to carry concealed handguns. Okay, so if you could sum up this paragraph in a single, direct, concise statement, what would you say? Anybody?
Anti-gun laws don't work, proven by New York and Washington.
Yeah, good, good. So this is something that you could, if you wanted, write in the margin as a summary. So what I would do is, if I was doing this on paper, I would do like just a little squiggly thing here, and then note that down in shorthand here. Now let's look for if there's any suspect elements. If anti-gun laws worked, then New York and Washington, the states with the toughest anti-gun laws, would have the lowest crime rates, but they have the highest. Conversely, crime rates plummet. Okay, so what we have here are statistics, but we don't have any citations. So we have no way of checking to see if this is true. Normally, we would give people the benefit of the doubt and just believe and just accept their statistics, but that would be silly because people lie all the time. So we're going to be wanting citations for all of our statistics. Here we go. So I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to highlight it. And then I'm going to write the notes. And to distinguish the note from the text, I'll use a smaller font. Easier to fit things there too. Okay, citation. I highly recommend that instead of doing what I'm doing now, you do it by hand. But I couldn't find a way of doing it by hand on camera that wouldn't be really, really unwieldy. New York and Washington have the highest crime rates. I talk a little bit about statistics. I think I may have a lecture devoted to statistics, but like I said, today we're introducing you to stuff that we're going to be expanding on for the rest of the course. You've probably heard it said that you can prove anything with statistics. Well, statistics are the result of information that's gathered. The way in which the information is gathered is going to affect what the numbers are going to say. There's something called cherry picking, where somebody looks at a field of evidence and picks one source that supports their view when most of the rest of the field doesn't. This is another reason why you should be suspicious of somebody just giving you a random statistic. If he gave you a citation, then you could go and check to see where that comes from and see if it's a reliable source. You could also find out when the research was conducted. This was published in 1992, which I'm sure you think of as about 1,000 years ago, but maybe the information that he gives in 1992 is outdated even then. Maybe the statistics that he's citing are from the 1970s. Who knows? We have no way of knowing because he doesn't cite it. As far as we know, he might have just made it up. I see that happen, by the way.
Sir, when we're critically analyzing, would it be possible to write down a question that we have? Like, for example, if they give an opinion, could we respond to that opinion like, oh, but would this be valid in contemporary society? Something like that?
Yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing that I want to do. So writing questions is another part of critical reading.
Okay, thank you.
Which is to say that instead of going citation needed, because I wanted to talk about the importance of citations, I could have instead typed, is this true? Like I could have highlighted this and gone, is this true? I don't know if this is true. Let's say it was true. Could it be misleading? New York and Washington, the states with the toughest anti-gun laws, would have the lowest crime rates. So you would think that the inference that you make from that would be, oh, well, I guess tough anti-gun laws don't stop crimes from happening. So I guess they don't work. But if you made that inference, your reasoning would be flawed. Anybody want to tell me why?
I was going to say that there could be other causations for that. Like there could be other reasons why that's true.
Good, yes. There's another problem with it though. Anybody?
They're not even explaining like the gun crime rates though. They're just saying crime in general. So that could mean anything.
Yes, exactly. He's making an inference about guns, but he just says lowest crime rates without specifying anything. He could have said lowest violent crime rates, but he didn't. He could have said lowest rate of crime involving guns, but he didn't. Why do you think he didn't? Maybe because it's not true. Maybe they don't have high rates of crime involving guns. Maybe they have really low rates of crime involving guns. I mean, if this was about like relevant crimes where people would be using guns, then he could have said that. In fact, he could have said nothing about crime at all. He could have said shootings. He could have said that these states with the toughest anti-gun laws have a high number of shootings, or they have a high rate of murders, or something relevant to guns. But he didn't. And that could have been an oversight. Maybe Andre Maru, 1992 Libertarian Party presidential nominee, is a first-year student in university? Probably not. It's a lot more likely that he didn't frame it that way, because if he had, the evidence wouldn't support his point of view. So this is another example of how you can lie with statistics. Because what kind of crime rates is he talking about? You know, most crimes are not violent. Most crimes don't involve guns. I wish I had some statistics now for like, what is the percentage of like felonies? So, you know, even just major crimes that involve guns. It's probably not all that high. Tax evasion is a crime, doesn't have anything to do with guns. Smoking pot is probably still illegal there. Well, forget about pot. Let's say cocaine is illegal, but you don't need a gun to do that. There's like all sorts, like most things that are illegal have nothing to do with guns. So just saying have the highest crime rates is pretty much meaningless. It's just containing no relevant information at all. And likewise, crime rates plummeted in Georgia and whatever. What kind of crime rates? You know, if the rates of crime that would normally involve guns went down, then yeah, okay, maybe there's a connection here. But if what happened was everybody stopped stealing cable, we might not think that that had anything to do with letting people carry concealed handguns. Number of shootings. If you could have said number of shootings. Wow, so many problematic things just in the first paragraph. But all the rest of the paragraphs are going to be fine, right? Let's read them. The reason should be obvious. Reason. The reason why crime rates plummeted up to 90% after states allowed law-abiding citizens to carry concealed handguns. So the reason why crime rates purportedly went down when you let anybody carry a gun, a concealed gun, should be obvious. Law-abiding citizens, there's that term again. I gotta highlight that. Law-abiding citizens. I am now flagging suspect elements. Law-abiding citizens know and obey the law. The definition of a law-abiding citizen is a citizen who obeys the law. Criminals don't care what the law is and won't obey it. So who benefits when gun ownership and use are restricted? The criminals, because decent folks are disarmed by the law, making it easier for criminals to prey upon them. Okay, suspect elements, decent folks, criminals. I want to contrast these, so I'm going to highlight that in a different color. Okay, it also goes much faster if you do it with pen and paper and actually mark up the text, as you can tell. So I've highlighted these different things in order to show that Mr. Maru is setting up some sort of contrast or dichotomy between what he calls criminals and what he calls law-abiding citizens or decent folks. Is there something problematic about this reasoning or this way of speaking? Well, it sort of sounds like there's two classes of people. There's the people who commit crimes, the criminal people, and then there's the decent people who don't commit crimes. But that's not an accurate description of reality. Those are two peculiar classes to put people in, because it's not like cats and dogs or men and women or Star Wars fans and Star Trek fans. Nobody is born a criminal. In fact, everybody is a potential criminal, because how do you become a criminal? This is an easy one. You become a criminal by committing a crime. So at any time, what he's calling a decent folk or law-abiding citizens, well, then they could easily switch over into the class of what he calls criminals. And so it's misleading to say, well, there's criminals on the one hand and law-abiding people on the other hand. Once you shoot somebody, no matter how decent and law-abiding you were up until that point, you're probably a criminal now. And you wouldn't be if you didn't have a gun. Anything else? If I was actually doing this on paper, like a sensible person, I would circle this, the reason should be obvious. No, I circle like the reason, and then I would draw an arrow to this sentence here to say it's the reason for that, because that's a little confusing. Does anybody else want to say something about paragraph number 2? Paragraph 3, registering guns and licensing gun owners won't reduce crime any more than registering cars and licensing drivers now reduces traffic accidents, which is to say, hardly at all. With millions of highly restrictive laws, still about 44,000 Americans yearly die in traffic accidents, while about 15,000 are shot to death. Since there are fewer cars than guns, cars are clearly more dangerous than guns. Should we outlaw cars? Okay, going back to the first sentence here, registering guns and licensing gun owners won't reduce crime any more than registering cars and licensing drivers reduces traffic accidents, which is to say hardly at all. Somebody please rephrase this sentence and put it into your own words and make it just a little bit more direct and straightforward. What's a simpler way of saying what he's saying there? Okay, he is saying that licensing drivers and registering cars does not reduce the rate of traffic accidents. Do you think that's true? Do you think that if we had no laws governing traffic, and if we didn't require people, we let people drive if they weren't competent drivers, we let just anybody drive, do you think we would have the same number of traffic accidents, or do you think we would have more?
Way more.
way more. We would have way more. So his claim that licensing drivers and registering cars doesn't reduce traffic accidents is just like wildly wrong.
He also says hardly at all without specifying what that means. Like, that's so vague. That could mean literally anything.
Yeah, he's not giving any statistics there. He's just saying something which sounds like a small amount. So, okay. So in order to deal with this, what I would do is I would highlight this sentence, and then I would write, well, probably in the margin, but I don't think I can write in the margin here. He says traffic laws don't reduce traffic accidents. WTF. Okay, well, we have some more places where we need citations. Citation. There's plenty of problems with these statistics too. 44,000 Americans die yearly in traffic accidents, while 15,000 are shot to death. So we only care about people dying, do we? What about all those people who are shot, but not shot to death? And when he says there are fewer cars than guns, I'm going with is that true? Is that true? Really? Are you sure? I'm not sure it's not true. Is this true? So there's nothing about paragraph number 3 that isn't problematic. Next paragraph. Like cars, guns are dangerous tools. So are kitchen knives and chainsaws. Should we register or outlaw them or license their use? Just because something is dangerous, say climbing mountains or riding bulls, doesn't mean we should restrict its use or test and license its practitioners. While I was thinking, I remembered that it is a good thing to write down, as part of this process, what you think the author's main point is, the thesis, or what you think the author's arguing for. So I'm going to write that down because we decided that a while ago. Don't thesis don't require licenses for guns. There, right.
Just to clarify, you just want us to read read the paragraph and just focus on the 5 W's and like just add any questions to it, if we had any.
Yes? Question mark? Not sure I understand the question. What I want you to do is what we did with the other paragraphs, which could be any number of things. Flagging and note-taking, what you do depends on what's there. Sometimes you're going to want to paraphrase something where the way the author's written it is unclear. Sometimes you're going to write a question because you have a question. Sometimes you're going to be looking up the meaning of words when you're not familiar with the words. Sometimes there's going to be like a technical term that you want to highlight because it's a technical term and that's important. We can only do the things that are in the actual paragraphs.
Okay, thank you.
I just highlighted like cars, guns are dangerous tools. And I'm going to paraphrase that by saying cars are like guns, kitchen knives and chainsaws. Okay, so what he's doing here is he's making an analogy. Analogies aren't necessarily the sort of thing that you should flag or highlight, but analogies are sometimes used as ways to make arguments. So since we're considering a text from the point of view of an argument, it when somebody makes an analogy, it might be worth considering, are they using this analogy to make an argument, which is to say, to support a conclusion? And I can tell you that that is what he is doing here. Cars are like guns and kitchen knives and chainsaws. We don't have laws restricting their use. Therefore, we shouldn't have laws restricting gun use. That's the structure of an argument from analogy. You see them a lot. There's a few problems here. Anybody? Okay, well, for one thing, we do restrict the use of cars. We do restrict the use of kitchen knives. We don't let people carry around concealed kitchen knives. I'm not really up on chainsaw law. Sorry, but I'm pretty sure we also don't let just anybody use a chainsaw, you know, or take a chainsaw with them on a shopping trip. So in fact, his analogy, he's saying guns are like these things which actually we do restrict. Therefore, we shouldn't restrict guns. So his argument really doesn't work very well there. Okay, let's just go with like kitchen knives. Let's say everybody's allowed to own kitchen knives, right? What are kitchen knives for? They're for cooking, I assume? What are guns for?
Murder.
Yes, guns are for murder, exactly. A kitchen knife is a useful thing to have, and you pretty much couldn't cook without it. So people need kitchen knives. Do people need guns? Not normally.
I would say no, but they use it as like as a way to protect themselves.
That's what people say. Do you think that people need guns to protect themselves?
It's almost like the inevitability of if you have a gun and you're in that situation, you'll probably use a gun. So it's not really fixed.
Exactly. If you have a gun, you're looking for an opportunity to use it. Final paragraph. Guns are tools, not evil instruments, capable of their own malevolence. Well, that's true. But who says that guns are evil instruments capable of their own malevolence? When people say, oh, we need to restrict gun use and run background tests before we give people a license to carry a gun. Why? Because guns are evil instruments capable of their own malevolence. Is that the answer that people give? No, because no one says this. So, like, what is the point in him saying it here? It's almost like he's trying to produce a caricature of his opponent's position. It's almost like he's saying, see, people restrict guns because they think that guns can shoot people all by themselves. I'm going to finish doing what I was doing, and then I will address the hand. I'll do what I'm doing, and then I'll talk to the hand. No one says this. Okay, Dora, please. Like,
So actually, this sentence reminds me of one of the topics that I talked about in my criminology course about guns. That do guns kill people or people kill people? I just wanted to ask you like this question. What's your opinion about that?
well, my opinion is that that's an oversimplification. The appropriate question, I mean, so do guns don't kill people by themselves. People also don't kill people by themselves. They usually need to have weapons. I think the more appropriate question is, does having a gun raise the likelihood that you're going to kill someone? And I think the correct answer to that question is yes. Imagine you're me. Imagine you're me. Imagine you're a middle-aged white man, and you happen to carry a gun in your bedside table for protection against burglars. And you come home one day, and you discover your wife in bed with your best friend, and in a rage, you grab the gun and you shoot the both of them. Different hypothetical scenario. Everything's the same, only there's no gun in the room. Which would you rather be the case? Which is just a way of illustrating the point that the more guns you have, the more likely are that people are going to get killed. But this guns don't kill people, people kill people, that's a slogan. We're going to talk about slogans in a future class. Gun symbol amplifies use power. In a rapist's hands, a gun is bad. In a law-abiding woman's hands, it's good. Well, sure. I mean, if you assume that anybody who has a gun is not going to commit a crime, then I guess it's okay that they have a gun. But that's sort of saying, yeah, it's okay for people to have guns as long as they don't use them. New York and Washington have proved that guns cannot be kept from criminal hands. Should we let decent people arm themselves without licensing? Ultimately, gun control is not about guns, it's about control. Beware. If I were doing this on paper, I would draw like another one of those squiggly lines here, and then I would write summary. This is like a summary paragraph.
I found that last line interesting, the part like it's about control. And like this is written at a USA Today, and just like the fact that they feel like they have like such a privilege, right, to have something like that.
Please expand upon that.
It's almost, how would I explain it? They feel like it's like guaranteed their right because it's based out of the Constitution, right? Like the Second Amendment, you hear Trump tweet about it all day. But I feel like it's different now because when that was written, it took a gun 25 seconds to load. Now you have guns that have 50 mags in it, and you can shoot it all in like 3 seconds. And I don't know, I feel like it's different context now.
Oh, you mean when the Constitution was written, it took 15 seconds to load a gun?
Yeah.
That actually sounds pretty fast. Didn't they just have muskets back then?
Yeah,
Can you carry
probably
around
longer.
a loaded musket? I feel like the answer is no. Yeah, good point. Times change. The Constitution really needs to be updated. But getting back to this, getting back to what you said earlier, gun control is not about guns. It's about control. I think you're saying that it's implying that it's an unjustified restriction on our freedom to say that we can't carry guns. And when he says gun control is about control, he makes it sound like people want to control you, which makes it sound very sinister. But do you think that people who want to restrict gun ownership are interested in controlling people, or do you think they have a different motive?
I wouldn't say it's based off controlling people.
I don't think, yeah.
I think it's
agree.
just based off like the well-being of everyone. Like I don't think they have like a negative intent.
Yeah, I think that they just want people to not get shot. So I would highlight this, especially if he uses the word beware. I would highlight this and I would make some sort of note like fear mongering or something. Okay, well, that's it. This is my example of flagging and note-taking. I'm going to repeat that flagging and note-taking doesn't just involve highlighting suspect elements, which was most of what we were doing. It just happened to be the case that there were an awful lot of suspect elements in this argument. Ooh, before we go, I want to ask a question. You don't have to answer it inside your head. So when you did your first reading, your quick reading, did this sound, did this article, did it sound persuasive? Did it sound reasonable? Did it sound like, well, I don't really agree, but I can see your point kind of thing? And then after we did the close reading, did you change your mind on that? And I'm going to say that for at least some of you, It probably looked like quite a reasonable argument at first glance, but once we started to pick it apart, which is what critical reading is about, we discovered that there was a problem with almost everything that the author said. So this is a good example of you don't just accept what people say. Think critically. Ask, is that true, or is that plausible, or do I believe that, or what are you driving at? The other thing that I want to say before we go is that flagging and note-taking involve more than just highlighting suspect elements. You should also flag things like definitions, important terms, what you think is the author's main point. It's just that this one didn't really happen to have definitions or technical terms, so we didn't have an opportunity to do that. So emphasizing for your assignment, which is due next week, I want you to do this thing that we did, steps 1, 2, and 3, and there probably will not be as many suspect elements in the text, and maybe there will be other things that you want to highlight, like technical terms and definitions and whatever. But what I mostly want to say is that text is similar to this one, but if you're going over it and you're going, oh, the professor found lots and lots of problems with the one we did in class, I can't find any problems. Does that mean I'm doing it wrong? Maybe, but maybe there's just fewer problems. Any questions?
Here is the critical reading assignment that is due next week. Like I said earlier, you will need to consult with your TA to find out if they prefer to have it submitted in hard copy in your tutorial, or if they prefer to receive it by email, which will not change the due date. I've included directions, but really the directions are do what you just saw me do, only with a different text. I'll remind you that it is best to print out the text that you're going to be analyzing. For your convenience, I've put it on a separate page from the directions, printed out so that you can mark it up with a pencil, or if you must, a pen. I understand some people don't like pencils. I'm the opposite. I don't like pens. That's all I have for now. See you next time.